Hello and welcome to Ask Sensei, an interactive question and answer session with the University of Florida's experts in cybersecurity. Thanks to funding from legislature and private donors, UF has created and enacted the Preeminence Plan, a roadmap to becoming a top 10 university that identifies and focuses on key research areas where we can make the biggest impact on the challenges facing our world. Cybersecurity is one of these areas, and we have 3 new hires from the College of Engineering here with us today to talk about it. There are 2 other preeminence research areas that are working behind the scenes for this event. Engineering's human-centered computing, led by Dr. Juan Gilbert, has helped design today's evaluations to be easily accessible for both our live and online audiences. And STREM Translational Communication Research with Dr. Janice Krieger at the College of Journalism and Communications, where we're filming today. Her team will use data from today's evaluations to better understand how important scientific information is interpreted by our audience and what we need to learn to most effectively keep the general public informed. For the past 2 weeks, we've asked UF's and the College of Engineering's social media subscribers to ask Sensei their cybersecurity questions. Sensei stands for SouthEasterN Security for Enterprise and Infrastructure. It is the preeminent center for cybersecurity research and education in the state of Florida. Sensei's researchers develop advanced security technologies, methodologies, and systems to address challenging issues of national importance, and their research is broad in scope from theoretical algorithms and cryptography to software and hardware systems design, and from individual embedded systems to national-scale infrastructure. Sensei's work has appeared in top journals and conferences in the field of information security, and its award-winning faculty and students have been supported by numerous grants from industry and government. Here with us today from Sensei are Dr. Patrick Traynor, Dr. Daniela Oliveira, and Dr. Kevin Butler. Dr. Patrick Traynor is responsible for uncovering critical vulnerabilities in cellular networks. He made the first characterization of mobile malware in provider networks and has a robust approach to detecting and combating caller ID scams. Dr. Kevin Butler focuses on security issues as they relate to storage systems, large-scale systems architectures, and networks. He works with portable storage, USB interface, protection of internet traffic, and the SSL infrastructure. Dr. Daniela Oliveira designs virtualization-based security solutions for OS kernels. She was hired as a big data specialist, but her interdisciplinary research takes her all across campus. She's currently collaborating with UF's Department of Psychology and the Institute for Aging to learn how we can better protect older populations online. Our first topic for today is passwords. Passwords are how we authenticate ourselves, how we prove that we are who we say we are, so that we can gain access to services and systems. Whether you care about your security or not, passwords are mandatory, and when confidentiality is a concern, encryption is advised. So, leading to our first question, what does a good password look like? And if I have a good one, why should I change it?
Wow, that's a great question. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for the kind introduction. So what does a good password look like? Ideally, we would like to have like a random mix of characters, letters, numbers, punctuation marks. And we understand how challenging it is to come up to devise like a very random password and especially remember it. So, but however, this is very important. The problem is that if we use very easy passwords like a word from a dictionary or like a common keyword like Harry Potter or I love you, it's very easy for adversaries to guess. It's not that they are guessing, they are trying manually doing that, but a computer can easily guess that. So what adversaries do, they have what we call a database of these common passwords, these dictionary passwords, and they can easily test all these passwords against, try these passwords in a particular service or system. So if you have a password like I love you, you're probably going to be, an adversary probably be able to assess the system as if it was you. So ideally, we would like to have a mix. My advice, I know that's very hard to come up with these random passwords, especially because these services, each service has a rule for coming up with a password. Oh, I'd like you to select 8 characters, at least 1 uppercase, at least 1 punctuation mark. What I personally do is to select a phrase. It can be from a magazine or it can be something that we make up that's meaningful to you. And you pick up like the first, for example, the first character of each word and mix with some punctuation marks or some numbers that are meaningful to you, and you use it. So that's my advice, because I know it's a burden to come up with good passwords, but it's important.
Yeah, one of the most important things that Daniela talked about was this idea of speed, and that's what computers do. They do simple operations very, very quickly. So for example, if you have a 6-character password, the name of your dog, it might be something that's difficult for one of us to guess, but a computer can guess tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of possibilities per second. So if you have a short password or words that are in the dictionary, those are really very, very dangerous things to have. And something you should do immediately is change it to something longer using the suggestions that Daniela provided.
There are also issues when it comes to the frequency with which we change passwords. Having a strong password is a good start, but it's not necessarily enough. And the reason for this is that if we use passwords in different locations, if you use the same password for your email as for your financial websites, as for other areas, then, or even if you use your one good password to one website, then if you use the same password over and over, if your computer is compromised, in other words, if it's taken over by an adversary where some malicious software is installed, then what an attacker can do is put software such as what's called a keylogger, something that records your keystrokes. And the next time you go to log into a website and you put your password in, that malicious software will record those keystrokes that you're adding in, and they'll be able to use that information to then have your password. And at that point, the game is up.
Just to follow up with what Kevin said about the keyloggers, it's much more common than we think. Sometimes I go to hotels, and I think you guys can relate, like the business center of a hotel where you can go and you can use their computer. So it's very dangerous. Like, you don't know what's inside these computers, and then you sit down in the business center and log in your Gmail account, and you have no idea whether this computer is compromised. For example, could have a keylogger. A keylogger is a software, a malicious software that records all the keys that are being pressed in the computer. So you go to the hotel business center and your password is just collected. So that's what he stressed, the importance of changing. Of course, we have to avoid the situation. Every time I see people in the business centers of the hotel, I just want to go there and say, don't use this computer. But anyway, so this is an example about why we should change often.
Well, that's one of the things I guess I just got to start thinking about. You know, long passwords, short passwords, it really doesn't matter after a while. Those keyloggers will get you. Then it's game over. The next question we have for you is, what is the vulnerability of current encryption systems? Is 128-bit okay? How about 256?
That's a great question, and this is it really speaks to how we look at cryptographic ciphers. So when we talk about bits, the bit length of a cryptographic cipher, what we're talking about is the key, the size of the key that's used to encode or decode a cryptographic message. And so the length in bits is the number of ones or zeros that makes up that key. So the natural reaction is to think that because a key is a certain length, that if you have a longer key, that necessarily means that the cryptographic cipher is more secure. But this isn't necessarily the case. And the reason is that different ciphers should be evaluated using different key lengths. 128 bits for one cipher doesn't mean the same as 128 bits in another. And it could be that a 256-bit cipher key length for a weak cipher is going to be far less secure than 128 bits with a much stronger cipher that's been proven to be secure, or that hasn't been proven to be insecure at least.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories in this space is that a couple of years ago there was a company offering a proprietary encryption system that had 1 million bit keys. And we all understand that 1 million is much more than 128 or 256, and so it must be better. Well, professional cryptographers got a hold of it, and within 12 hours they showed that it was easily breakable. The number of bits by itself isn't enough information to tell whether this algorithm is secure and whether you should be using it.
We have a question from the audience today.
Yeah, if I have nothing to hide, why should I worry about security?
Well, that reminds me about someone that I met. So once I met someone, a high-level professional, and she said that her password, she mentioned her password, something very simple like I love you or something. And she told me that she told me exactly what you said, like she had nothing to hide. Like if her credit card numbers got compromised, the bank would call her. Like if any purchase over $500, the bank would call. So she's not concerned about that. She said that everything is important, all the files that are important in her computer, it's backed up. And she has nothing sensitive. Like if they compromise her computer and steal all the files, they could go to the front page of New York Times, that she was fine with that. So even if you feel like that, it's still important to protect your systems. Why? Then I was very curious about the situation, because she was a high-level professional, and I asked, so is there anything in this world of security, cybersecurity, that actually concerns you? And then she stopped and think for like 1 minute and said, oh yeah, I would be very worried if, for example, a water facility got compromised, or the electrical grid, or the ATM machines, they wouldn't work for 24 hours. I would be worried about that. And then what I explained to her is that her computer could get compromised and could be used to attack those facilities. So she and you need to worry about, even though you seem, oh, I'm just a regular citizen, I have nothing to hide, you still have a responsibility about keeping your computers safe, because your computers can be used to cyber terrorism, like compromising a facility.
And by the way, chances are you do have information that's important to other people. So if this person had the social security numbers of the employees that worked at their company, any kind of payroll data or tax data, it may not bother her, but some other people might have something to say about whether that information is lost. So we can't have that myopic view that, well, I don't care, so I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, there's also a real issue of the fact that you've got a certain amount of information, but now as computers are able to amass more and more information and to be able to put that information together from separate data sources, you've got some set of information, and it might not be all that interesting. You might not think it's all that interesting in isolation, but when you take that information and you combine it with other information, for example, information that's stolen from another database, then all of a sudden you've got highly sensitive information that you've put together, and you can use that then to potentially compromise accounts and to get into systems and to then start wreaking real havoc in systems.
Well, this is a great chance for feedback. Why are simple passwords such as ABCD1234 dangerous? Text your answer to 904-217-6957 now. 5. They are easy to guess. 6. They can be cracked by brute force. 7. They offer little protection against worms. And 8. All the above. That leads us into a great section, and that is cyber terrorism. Cyber terrorism is any attack on a piece of critical infrastructure, from the electrical grid to the water supply to the financial system or communications networks. Committing such an attack can range from being a felony to an act of war. So this leads us to our first question. Has a cyber attack ever happened in the United States?
That's an interesting question. There have been cyber attacks that have been documented around the world, and we saw the first example of cyber terrorism in Estonia in 2007. And what happened there was that Russian hackers essentially, over a political dispute, started launching denial of service attacks against the Estonian government, and they essentially took down the entire cyber infrastructure of the company. They took down the websites of all of the major banks, of all of the government services, etc. This is the first time we've seen this type of attack at scale, and it's really led us to understand that this is a new and a very powerful means of attacking an enemy and of essentially creating a terrorist type activity. Now, we have seen cyber attacks happening in the United States. A few years ago in fact, there's an interesting story. A few years ago at Central Command, the Central Command does a lot of the counterintelligence and intelligence services within the United States, and they're located in the Washington, D.C. area. Employees at Central Command found in the parking lot some USB sticks that were lying around. And one of these employees took this stick from the parking lot and wanted to figure out who it belonged to. So they took this USB stick and they plugged it into their computer. So this was not a great idea. It turns out that this USB information, or these USB sticks, had malware on them that essentially spread through the computer networks. And these computers were actually hooked up to part of the classified networks, CyberNet, which is one of the classified networks in the Department of Defense. And then from there, this malware spread into operational, active combat operational networks in the Middle East. So this is an example of how cyber attacks can be done. This was a clear compromise of our nation's critical infrastructure. So this actually has happened here in the U.S.
So the question asks about the United States, but there are other examples of cyber attacks in other countries. So for example, I don't know if many people were aware in 2005, the city of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, a city of millions of people, 6 million people, just the city, like I'm not counting the greater Rio de Janeiro, was compromised. The electrical grid was compromised and the city was in total darkness for hours. So can you imagine the chaos? Of course they had generators and everything, but imagine the chaos in the city, and that could happen. Like that is a real threat.
Well, I got a very personal question. What are you doing that should make me feel not so terrified with all of this?
So this is actually, these types of questions are part of what makes the center a particularly great place. So these are questions that I think we're all very interested in trying to answer. We're looking at doing this from a variety of standpoints. So in my own research, I've been looking at how do we make USB drives themselves safer, as well as the computers that they plug into. So trying to prevent some of those attacks that we've seen in the past, and while still being able to preserve using these devices, because they're very useful. I've also been looking at creating more trustworthy embedded systems devices, and for increasing the security of what we call the cyber physical systems. And by that I mean systems that interact with both digital information and the real world. And understanding how those systems work, understanding how to better control the privacy of information inside those systems, and trying to ensure that they operate in a safe state.
Yeah, by the way, one of the things, as Kevin was saying, that makes the center ideal is that the University of Florida is a complete university. We've got very strong programs, not only in all disciplines of engineering, but in the humanities and the sciences. And so you'll see in our work that we reach across those boundaries to find the right folks to help us with problems in energy, in social issues, in aging. And that's what makes Florida really the right place to be doing this kind of work.
Yeah. In my area in particular, I try to attack the problem from two perspectives. So the first one is a very engineering, very technical perspective. Like one of my goals of my research is to protect our operating system. So what's an operating system? You can think of an operating system as a middle layer or middleman that will control the interactions of your applications with the actual hardware. So this layer should be very protected, because if it's compromised, it can compromise everything else. So one of my goals is to devise operating systems that are more secure. On the other side, I'm very excited about looking at the human factors of cybersecurity. So one thing that I'm studying right now, and Patrick mentioned about the interdisciplinary nature of the center. I'm working with a professor in psychology. We are trying to understand how social engineering attacks, how the elderly population are so vulnerable or will be vulnerable in the future, how they're going to be targeted by adversaries in a special way. So that's what I have been doing in terms of research and what excites me.
Really sounds like a war between two sides, and I'm glad that we have you on our side. It makes me feel a lot safer. Thank you. And now to our next question from the audience.
Yes, what can we do as citizens to prevent cyber terrorist attacks?
So that's a fantastic question, and we really encourage people being active on this, because it's a complex issue. The first thing that we recommend is, of course, education. Coming to things like this are a great first start, but we're offering a variety of courses that we think will be really beneficial for future engineers and scientists out there to help us conquer these problems. The second and more immediate thing is, you should be really contacting your state representative, your congressperson, your senator, and telling them that this kind of problem needs attention, and that places like the University of Florida are where these solutions are going to come out of. So we certainly need broad political support for the kind of work that has to be done in order to ensure that we remain a nation with a 21st century economy.
So it's time for some feedback. Which of the following is the most realistic threat to your mobile device? Text your answer to 904-217-6957 now. 21, legitimate apps that may use my information in ways I may not approve. 22, viruses designed specifically to target mobile phones. 23, loss or theft of my device. 24, hackers gaining access to your phone and turning it into a listening device. To earn more points toward a cash prize, tweet what you have learned about mobile devices to #AskSensei, the hashtag. Chances are you have one in your pocket right now, but our mobile phones are way more than just games and emails. They are what runs the 21st century, and your mobile security deserves some of your attention. So, for our first question on this section, true or false? Your phone's camera and microphone can be accessed by others to watch or listen to you without your permission.
So I actually want to start on this topic and take it a step back and help people understand just how important mobile is. I think we can all agree that the internet's a big deal, and at about 2 billion users, it is. When we talk about mobile, there are over 6 billion users around the planet. That's out of the 7 billion in the population. When we talk about how the rest of the world is going to come online in the next 5 to 10 years, it's via mobile. So if you have a small business or even a large business right now and you're thinking, how am I going to talk to Africa, to Southeast Asia, and these places that are really developing new economies, it's via mobile. So you have to be paying attention here. Now this is a great question because it asks, what kind of capabilities does my mobile phone have? And these devices are amazing sensor-filled boxes. They've got everything from cameras and microphones to accelerometers, and they allow us to build lots of very interesting applications. The question is, and I think the interesting part about this is, without your permission. And that's the tough part. Oftentimes when you install an application, it'll say, hey, can I use these things? But they never tell you what exactly they're going to use them for. So it may say, I'd like your GPS information because I'm going to present you a map. What it may not tell you is, I'm going to give that information away to advertisers so they know roughly where you are, which ads they should be serving up to you, and that kind of information is dangerous. So I'd actually argue that this is one of the most dangerous things about cell phones, is that you have lots of apps running on them that you may have officially given permission to by the very act of installing them, but you just don't know what they're going to do with your information once it gets on there. One thing I'd caution folks on is to think about all the applications you have on your phone right now and think about how many of them did you pay 99 cents for. If you didn't pay for that app, those folks aren't making those apps out of the kindness of their hearts. They have families to feed as well, and so they're making money on you in some way. So this actually is the biggest security threat that users face when owning a mobile device, and that is your private information, and oftentimes information you're not even thinking about, is regularly leaving your device and going to parties that you may not even know.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you have a question.
Yes, hi. My question is about mobile devices malware, and should I install antivirus software on my phone?
Yeah, this is a great question. So most folks in here who have a desktop machine probably have antivirus software running on it, and that's a really good idea. So now that mobile devices can do just about everything our desktops can, it would stand to reason that maybe we should be installing AV software as well. That felt like a good answer, but I didn't have a good answer as a scientist. So about 2 years ago, my group started a research project where we went out and tried to figure out just how many devices are actually infected with mobile malware. What we found actually bucked all of the trends in the headlines. If you go and look, you'll see mobile malware up 10,000% this year. But what we showed with data was that you are far more likely to be struck by lightning over the course of your entire lifetime than to be infected with mobile malware. Now that doesn't mean it's impossible, and through measures like social engineering, by tricking you into installing applications, it's possible to get malicious programs onto your phone. That said, if you have to make decisions about purchasing for an organization, the data says that right now there really isn't that much malware out there that people are installing, and that careful selection of which apps do end up on the phone is sufficient to protect you at the moment.
Wow. At least I know that I'm more likely to get struck by lightning.
Hey, and the good news is I know that sometimes these conversations are a bit of a downer, but here's a good thing. That things in mobile, at least in terms of absolutely malicious software, they're much better than they are in the traditional computing space at the moment.
Good.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good point in its own right, is that part of our goal as researchers as the security is to try to take part of the burden off of security. We've said a lot of things about being vigilant and refreshing your passwords and being careful about the things you do. A lot of us are busy people. We have our own lives to lead, etc. We shouldn't be expecting the population as a whole to all have to be security experts in every single thing. And so this has been an ongoing research thrust within the community and within our own research of trying to make security as transparent as possible to you as the end user. By that, what I mean by that is trying to take the security decisions and taking them out of your hands so that you're free to do the things that you want to do with your devices while ensuring that the underlying infrastructure is still safe and secure.
So just revisiting that lightning example again, just don't take an unnecessary risk. You wouldn't go stand under a tree in a thunderstorm, right?
Yeah.
So our next question is from Twitter right now. How secure are mobile NFC payments compared to a plastic bank card? We know that's becoming more relevant every day now.
Sure. So if you're not familiar, NFC is near-field communication, and the two most common embodiments of this right now are Google Wallet and Apple Pay. So I'm sure many of you have heard of Apple Pay in the last few weeks. To me, these things are really exciting because a credit card is a terrible way to have a secret. It's open sesame. It works every time. And the reason why we can steal credit card information is because as long as I have those small set of numbers, I can use them anywhere for anything. And that's terrible. So what some of these new NFC solutions offer is that every time you make a purchase, they create a series of random numbers that can never be used again for any other transaction. So if somebody happens to, say, install malware on a cash register and see those numbers, it's not like they can then take money from your account or use it to buy something that you otherwise wouldn't have. So I find these to be very, very interesting and a very, very big step towards a more secure purchasing environment. Now, one thing I do want to note is that it's not clear. Folks have been working on these systems. It's not clear what all of the security mechanisms are, so I can't say to you that right now Apple Pay or Google Wallet are absolutely secure. Nothing is, but I can't tell you, what the weaknesses are in those systems yet. But I'm really encouraged. I think this would be a monumental step forward in protecting you at vendors.
I think that's absolutely true, and I'd also echo the note of caution in that we don't have sufficient experience to know where the potential weaknesses are in these systems. The theory is sound. The idea of using unique numbers every time is definitely important. One thing that's important for you as the public is to ensure that banks don't look at these systems and then transfer essentially the burden of responsibility in case something goes wrong onto you. So right now with credit cards, you know that you're liable for the first $50, for example, if your credit card is compromised, and then the credit card company sort of shoulders the rest of the burden, and that's because they know what the inherent weaknesses are, and there's only so much you can do as the consumer. If you if you've got one of these systems, what's been happening in Europe is that they've been moving to, with credit cards, what's called a chip and pin system, where there's they use a chip that gives us a random set of numbers every time, and then you put in your personal information code. And what the banks have been saying is that if you've been doing this, then if something has gone wrong, or if there's a fraudulent transaction, they claim that there's no longer any means of enacting a fraudulent transaction. So that if you put in the code, if the code is entered, then it must have been you that put in that code. What's been shown in the research community is that the system has been broken in various ways, and it is in fact possible to have fraudulent transactions based on a chip and pin system. So until we have a better understanding of the system, make sure that we don't allow ourselves to be put in the situation where we are left liable for things that might not be things that we've done.
So again, we come back to being careful because almost anything's possible in the long run. So this is a perfect opportunity for feedback. What is one good way for consumers to protect themselves from a potential data breach at popular retailers like Home Depot? Text your answer to 904-217-6957 now. 17, avoid using PayPal or Apple Pay. 18, avoid checking your credit report. 19, sign for a purchase instead of typing in your PIN. And 20, click on any links you are emailed that offer free credit monitoring. That leads us into our next section, social engineering. Social engineering is convincing someone to do something they wouldn't necessarily do. In cybersecurity, this means giving away your password, or personal or sensitive information, or downloading malicious software, or granting someone access to your computer. Our first question is, social engineering is not a new concept, obviously, but how has it evolved with technology today?
Yeah, so I'm very excited to talk about social engineering because I'm doing research on that. So like the question said, social engineering is something old. It's probably something that comes from since humans started existing. My daughter, she does social engineering with me all the time. So it's about convincing someone to do something that may not be on that person's best interest to do. And it started like as a personal thing, like we didn't have technology in the beginning, like my daughter, like convincing me to let her have ice cream before dinner or something, to using the phone to get some bit of information here so that I can call someone else. And like with this bit of information, I will impersonate as someone that knows about how the company operates so that I can get another bit of information and keeping collecting these bits of information until I can call and say, oh, by the way, I am Mary from purchasing department. I have this code here and I'd like to assess, I have a problem with my system. Can you please log into the system on my behalf so that I can do this? So it's something that is very common. So social engineering, the concept of the internet, was the next step. So how can we convince someone to do things that will not be in the best interest? Could be like, for example, clicking on a link that is malicious. When the person clicks on a link, some malicious software gets installed in the person's computer. And what's bad about that? First, this computer can be used to attack other people, to send malicious emails to other people to convince them to click on other emails, to attack other machines in what we call denial of service attack, where a certain machine receives so many requests that it cannot serve legitimate requests. So right now, most of the social engineering in the internet world happens with what we call spear phishing emails. So that there are target emails that provide you an offer. And in the beginning, the offers were very blatant, like, Viagra, click here for Viagra, or click here if you want to get a discount in a vacation. This type of spear phishing emails, they get filtered very easily by our email filters. So, but the adversaries, they are not going to stop here, okay? So what's the next step? Very, very target email.
We're all vulnerable to social engineering, and the folks who are doing this tend to play to things like vanity or your fears. So think about your own biases as you leave this room. Were you to get an email that was cheering for a sports team that you liked, or was championing a political cause that you might like, somebody may be trying to get you to do something else from that thing that they know about you. So understand your own weaknesses and biases and try and make clear decisions, because ultimately social engineering is trying to force you to not be a good thinker.
Yeah, and what you said is very important. We are all, even though I'm talking about a certain population being vulnerable, we are all vulnerable. So in psychology, they say that there's this, what they call these weapons of automatic influence. It's just like our brains. It's just like there is like a key in our brain that when we tape, when we press, we start behaving in a certain way automatically. So for example, one classic weapon of automatic influence is reciprocity. So if Patrick comes here with a gift for me, I feel in debt to you, right? It's just automatically, there's no way we cannot not feel like that. So in a social engineering works, so imagine that you receive an email, oh, by the way, we are offering this, and this is a book, a PDF, with a brochure or with some information we'd like you to read. So you feel like, oh, at least I have to take a look at that. And it could be malicious. So as like a second example, authority. Every time we see something disguised, or even like with this figure of authority, like a lawyer, IT department, police officer, or even someone well-dressed like you, or like I said, it's just like we feel the need to comply with the figure of authority. So everybody's vulnerable. As long as we're human, you're vulnerable.
That's an interesting point about the being human. Is that computer systems? There's an interesting case of unanticipated consequences. Is that operating systems are actually more secure now than they've ever been. We've solved a lot of the old problems in how you compromise an operating system. There's been a lot of advances, things like randomizing the address space of the operating system and putting in protections of hardening parts of the operating system that need to be kept secure. As a result, it's become increasingly difficult to attack the operating system. But what has remained the same level of difficulty is attacking the human as it's been in the past. So it's become an easier vector now to try to attack the human in terms of having them be the source of the compromise than it's ever been in the past. So in many ways, social engineering and what we call Trojan horses that have humans as the initial point are more of a factor now than they've ever been before. And it's where this idea of spear phishing, where we have these targeted attacks as a means to get more information out of systems, is a larger threat now than it's ever been.
Yeah. What you said is very important. Like, even if we have the most protected system in the world, with every operating system completely protected, the hardware completely invulnerable to attacks, if the part that's like communicating with the computer is vulnerable, the system is vulnerable.
The next question is from Facebook. It says, is ransomware something the general public should be more aware of? And how do we protect ourselves, and in particular, our elderly family members? That's going back to what we were just talking about, from an attack. What is ransomware to begin with?
Okay, so ransomware, it's a type of malware. It's a malicious software that gets installed in your computer. It could be by an exploit, could be by social engineering. And the idea is just like ransom, okay? Think about ransom. It's just restrict the functionality, the access to certain parts of or functionality of your system in exchange for something, for money or for like personal information. And of course, as it's just like any malware, so it has this particular function, this particular characteristic of asking for ransom. We should be worried about that. Adversaries, they are very creative. They are always going to go to the next level. And one thing that's important is to not give in. So if you are unsure, talk to your internet provider, talk to someone, a colleague that you know that's more technological savvy, and report. Even like your internet provider will probably help you so that you can know where you should report. I believe that the FBI would be very interested in this type of things, especially because they are asking for something, so it could be used to trace them back, right?
Yeah. One thing I want to note is it's funny when in the early days of ransomware, we as security professionals kind of laughed because these guys would write fairly unsophisticated software and use bad algorithms to usually encrypt your data. And so what you'd do is you'd go in and go, okay, well, that's terrible, and here you can fix it yourself, and you get your data back. Well, they listened to us, and they started using good encryption algorithms and good practices, and now this stuff is as unbreakable as the most protected files in a bank or a government. So it is very, very dangerous. The biggest thing that I would recommend is backing up your most important documents. And those might be tax documents, they might be correspondence, they might, for me, be the pictures of your kids. Regularly back them up, keep them offline and even off-site such that, let's say it's not ransomware, maybe your house just catches on fire. You have some means of recovering those things, and you don't have to necessarily try and deal with the folks who are doing this, because they often ask for a lot of money, and for people who don't back these things up, there are very few options for them to recover their data.
Yeah, and what we hear, unfortunately, for example, for bigger institutions like banks, it's that they give in, right? They are a little bit concerned about their reputation, about releasing to the public the fact that they have a problem with their security of their systems. And what we hear is that they usually pay and keep everything quiet.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that ransomware is part of a larger set of malicious software that's generally called crimeware. And it's probably interesting for most of us to realize that computer crime, it used to be, people would think about computer crime as relatively low-level petty stuff, some guy in their parents' basement just trying to hack a system. It was seen as kind of an innocuous thing that wasn't very important. It turns out that one of the largest groups of individuals doing this type of attack is now organized crime. It turns out that it is far easier to do extortionware and ransomware and just to send out these messages and hope that people respond. Regardless of what the hit rate is, it's a lot safer than trying to rob a bank. There's a lot less opportunity to get shot when you're just sending out emails hoping that someone's going to respond. And the fact that people do respond means that just the size of the internet, the number of folks that are online, and the ease of which it's capable to send out these emails and to have people click on them to start these programs off that essentially end up locking their systems. What this has meant is that the amount of money that's made from computer crime is now about the same as the amount of money that's made from physical crime in the physical world. So it's something that we all have to be careful about in our day-to-day lives in terms of the things that we click on. And what we can do to protect ourselves is things like keeping our browsers updated. If you're using a browser such as Chrome or Firefox, then they automatically download lists of known bad domains, so that if you're browsing to a destination, you might, and you're clicking on somewhere, you'll get a notice saying, are you sure you want to go here? Because we've heard some bad stuff about this place. You might want to think twice about going to this destination. So doing things like that, keeping your system up to date, keeping your browsers up to date, are ways that we can help protect ourselves.
Yeah, the new version of Tony Soprano, right? The mafia goes where the money is, and the money is online now.
That's right.
Our next question is from Twitter. It's, when I see gushy Facebook images like "I love mom" stuff, instructing me to share, or else, I'm wary. Bad manners or social engineering? Which one is it?
Social engineering, right? Like, we should be very suspicious of this, because our accounts can be compromised, okay? We were talking about passwords. Suppose that Patrick has an account on Facebook and his password gets compromised. Like, when an adversary now knows Patrick's credentials. And this adversary can impersonate Patrick on Facebook and put this type of things. And if I'm not suspicious, I would say, oh, I'm going to click. Patrick just posted something very interesting. Maybe I should check. And my computer can get compromised. Like, could be like a link that could download malicious software into your computer. So you always should be suspicious, even if it comes from your friend, your Facebook friend.
Yeah, I often, when I see these things on Facebook or any other social networking site, the first thing I ask is, would this person really post this? I have a family member who is elderly, and there was a somewhat explicit video posted and said, you should click on this link. And I went, this person, there's just no way that they would ever post this. And it turned out, of course, that the account was compromised. So just be logical. And the other is, don't necessarily click on everything. I mean, ask yourself, do I really need to see this content? Do I really care about this content? I understand that that's sort of the way that this works, right? I mean, you're supposed to share lots and lots of content, but you have to be careful. Try and figure out where you're being redirected. A lot of times it'll try and have you install an app, and those apps can be dangerous and get information, download software. So just really be vigilant.
That's true. And if you see those Facebook messages that folks post that say, share this in 3 days or you will die, there's been very little evidence that anybody has died from not sharing any of those messages.
And some messages that I received, like sometimes they are not so explicit like this one, but just like someone tagging lots of friends. I'm not sure if you received this. Oh, check it out, it's so cool. And that there is a link, and that you see like 100 people being tagged. And this is very suspicious. So it's very hard. Imagine if just you being tagged and it's your brother. You have like the tendency to comply, right? It's sometimes it's easy to see, sometimes you have to, let me check, let me think a little bit whether my brother or my family member would do something like that, would post something like that.
This is a great chance for feedback. If your computer is compromised by an attacker, what should you not do? Text your answer to 904-217-6957 now. 9 for change your password to something you have used in the past. 10, scan your computer with an updated antivirus program. 11, report the incident to your email provider. 12, review your email settings in case the hacker created forwarded email addresses. Whether you realize it or not, most of your data today exists in the cloud. Email, photos, financials data, and soon your medical records if not already. So cloud security should definitely be on your mind. A very simple question, as I'm sure some people might be wondering right now. Could you explain what is the cloud in general? I know there are different versions, and how does it work compared to normal computing?
Yeah, so the cloud is that's a great point, is that we hear a lot about the cloud, and what does the cloud mean? As you mentioned, that's a great point, is that the cloud means different things to different people, and it can refer to a lot of different things, but essentially in the most general way, what makes the cloud different from regular computing is that the cloud essentially, when information goes into the cloud, it allows us to transfer information from our local systems into large-scale data centers that are located all over the world. And so information gets transferred from our systems to these systems that have large amounts of processing power. And from a business standpoint, the cloud is a really interesting proposition, because it means that rather than having to maintain your own IT infrastructure, if you need to, for example, scale up the amount of information that you're serving out. Say that you're a startup company and you want to you're launching a new product, and it turns out that demand blows up for your product. It shows up, for example, it shows up on CNN, or it shows up on Reddit, and all of a sudden you've got 1 million people wanting to check out your information, when before you were anticipating maybe 50 or 100 or a couple thousand would do it. With the cloud, you're able to instantly scale the number of resources that you need, so that you've got all of these computing capabilities there that are available for you to use, but you don't have to have them all. You don't have to have them all purchased in advance. And so this is a very useful way of being able to do computing. And it allows us to have these types of economies of scale, where we can have large access to large-scale computing and large-scale storage that can be replicated around the world, which allows us to keep our information more secure, or at least free from being subject to any one individual event disrupting that information.
And by the way, it's a really good point. When Kevin says resources, I mean, it really is what you need. So if it's storage, you can expand the storage. If you need to process more things or do it faster, it can be processing. It can be your network, or how that's configured, how you move traffic around. It's very exciting, very flexible. So we understand the word cloud is amorphous. It's not well shaped, and that's what the cloud is. It can take the shape that you need it to.
Right. Increasing the boundaries. Thank you. And another question from the audience.
So you've mentioned CNN just a few minutes ago. If the cloud is the safest place, then what about all those photos that got leaked?
That's a great question, and it's something that it's something that we're really working on. Is how do we ensure that once data makes it into the cloud, it's actually secure? And now, what happened to those unfortunate celebrities is that it sounds as though in their particular case there were issues with passwords. If you had chosen a relatively weak password that someone else could have guessed, then that's a potential issue. Now, if you're in the public eye, it turns out there's a lot more information about you that's accessible to the average person. So somebody who's trying to target you for attack has more information at their disposal. Now, some things that you might see when you log into a site. You're often asked to answer security questions in order to get your password back. So those security questions, if you have a lot of information posted about yourself, and that information is something that you use as the basis of these security questions, and somebody else can go in and answer those security questions and essentially redirect the password to their email account, and then use that to sign in as you and get that information. So that's one thing, and that's something that we're working on to try to that the research community at least is trying to work on to be more safe, so that you don't have to. So we have safe ways of you being able to use and access your passwords. Another issue that's at play here is that information from these phones in some cases was automatically uploaded to the cloud. Some of you, for example, who own iPhones might have had the new U2 album show up on your phone. Not everybody wanted this. For me, I thought it was great because I'm a fan, but not everybody enjoys the having things automatically downloaded to their phone. And in the same way, information can be automatically uploaded, and that can be useful in many ways. It could be because if we've taken a photo on our phone, for example, we want to ensure that it's still there in case we lose our phone, and so it's easily accessible to other devices. But what this means is that once that information is in the cloud, it's important to have ways to ensure that that information is removed from the cloud if we no longer want it there. So some of these photos apparently were deleted off of the phones, but they were not deleted from the cloud. So they were still available as backups. And that's something that we need to be, we as a community need to ensure that we have ways of ensuring that information is deleted from the cloud when we as users want that information to be deleted.
By the way, just a way for the folks at home to measure their own susceptibility, after we finish here today, go take a picture of something with your smartphone, and most of them now are connected to Dropbox or iCloud. Wait a few minutes, open a browser, see if it's there, then delete the picture on your phone and see if the picture goes away. If not, you would have likely been just as susceptible as many of the celebrities who had their photos leaked. So something for you to internalize this problem and understand that it would affect most of us.
Oh, thank you. And obviously our traffic is very important. It's not only physical, it's now in the digital realm, making sure that everything is secure and gets from one place to the other. That leads us into our next feedback question. What is the most common security threat you are likely to face? Text your answer to 904-217-6957 now. 1. Having a trusted website encourage you to download malware. 2. Having someone guess your password. 3. Having your data stolen from a national retailer. 4. Having your photos stolen from the cloud. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience and with our viewers?
We really hope that folks here see the Sensei Center as a place that they can come for security answers, both for problems we understand and problems that are just emerging. There is a lot of really bleeding edge work that's coming out of our group from our students, and lots of opportunities here and in the jobs that will be created by the kind of work that we do. So keep your eye on us, reach out to us, talk to us on a regular basis. We're looking forward to working with you.
Yeah. So not only for you guys in the audience, but whoever is watching us, we need more people working in this area, in cybersecurity. You need more researchers, we need more professionals, so especially women. So there's a gap of jobs in cybersecurity that's expected in the next decade or so. And we need to involve more of the half of our population, the women. So we need more women working on cybersecurity, but we need more people in general. So check our web pages, and like if you're interested, check our courses. We have from intro to advanced, and we would love to have more people, more students, more researchers working on that.
Yeah, and when it comes to cybersecurity, security has become an increasingly interdisciplinary type of endeavor. It's not just about doing math and doing cryptography and doing complexity theory. A lot of these issues, as we've talked about today, touch on areas like psychology, like sociology, like understanding how humans actually think. And humans have always been important, and perhaps are even more important to understanding computer security than they've ever been. So there's a large range of topics within security, things that touch on legal issues, policy issues, all aspects of social sciences and humanities are potential cybersecurity areas. So we're really looking for folks who have broad and diverse interests. And so don't think that that it's always just about hacking on a computer that makes cybersecurity interesting. It's a really interesting place. It's perhaps unique in that we have, as we've talked about today, the types of problems that we're looking at are things that are making the front page news nowadays. So it's a really exciting area, and it's something where if we come up with solutions, they've got real tangible potential benefits for all of society. So it's a very gratifying area to be working in, and it's something we'd highly encourage you to be aware of in your day-to-day life in terms of looking and being aware of what makes you and what makes society more secure, and talking to us if there's things that you're interested in pursuing.
We'd like to thank all of our online participants as well as our live audience today. Of course, thank you to our experts, Patrick, Daniela, and Kevin. Thank you for joining us for this question and answer session with UF's experts in cybersecurity. Again, we wouldn't be able to share our expert researchers with you or have them at all were it not for support from legislature and private donors. UF is committed to tackling the biggest challenges facing us together. We call that working for the greater good. Hope you benefited from that work today and that you'll be joining us again for more expert advice on things that matter most. For now, stay safe.